Jesus, or John, told his disciples, the Messiah is coming. And now that he is coming, I must decrease so that he may increase. And then the funny thing about Jesus is, instead of demanding a throne, he lived a life that seemed to say, I must decrease so that God may increase. He walked this path that was meant to maximize God's presence in his life and in ours. Remember the mid-90s, anyone? Mid-90s, the trend started, the rubber bracelets, what would Jesus do? WWJD. And it was well-intentioned, wasn't it? This is not one of them, but let's travel together to pretend like. And this bracelet, the point is, you start the morning with your morning prayer and devotions, but the second you get into traffic, the real world kind of sucks, all God's presence, or, all sense of God's presence away from you. And we don't often act resourcefully to each other. We do not extend grace to one another. And so, as you go through your day, you would look at this bracelet, and you would say, when confronted with a situation, what would Jesus do? Well, my boss is a grandstanding megalomaniac who insists I work weekends while he does client development on a corporate yacht. WWJD. I think Jesus would smite him. We shouldn't ask, what would Jesus do? He was a first century human being. Divine, yes, but human also. And we cannot necessarily carry that over into 20th century, 21st century circumstances. Instead, we should ask, what did Jesus do? And as fragmented as the story of his life is, we know that whatever the circumstance was, even up to the crucifixion and beyond, he loved, he loved, he loved. This is a tough teaching. For 43 years, I've tried to carry in my heart both love and hate, and they don't mix. They're not supposed to mix. And they cause turmoil. There was one person in my life who I saw, who I experienced that really got it. That really had the sense of what Jesus was up to. And that was my grandma Hyde. By society's standards, worthless. She was homebound. She was poor. She could not serve her church. She could not even attend her church near the end. She could not support her church financially. In the larger community, she could not go out and do anything to help others. She could not cut checks to help others. She was worthless by society's standards. But when you stood in her presence, and in her final days, I was still apart from the church, cynical, barely believing. You felt a love coming out of her that no matter what your theology, you knew you were an important creation of God. The last time I ever saw her, she grabbed my arm on the way out. She had somehow learned that I was a Sunday school teacher, which was funny at the time because I just had no aptitude for working with children and had no interest in teaching Sunday school. But this is how desperate the church was that we went to. And she grabbed my arm and she said, whatever you do, make sure you tell the children that Jesus was a human being. 3 days later, she laid down for a nap and never woke up. I have no idea what she meant by that phrase and have struggled with it in the many years since she passed away. And the best I can tell is this, was that Jesus showed us a path. And every episode in his life is a signpost. We can't necessarily replicate him. We wouldn't want to replicate the crucifixion. But it was a signpost that we can walk and all along know that what Jesus did do was love. He loved. He loved. He loved. And it started early. It started in the temple when instead of choosing the pleasure of going home from Jerusalem, he stayed at the temple to draw close to God. Then, at the river, when he humbled himself to be baptized, and then into the wilderness to confront his demons, his temptations, and then into the world to give every single thing he could. Why do we gather at this figurative river? Why do we go through baptism? Why was Jesus baptized? I'm not sure. But somehow, as a community, it draws us closer to each other, to Jesus, and to God. Amen.